Hi, welcome to Eaton Radio. I'm Chef Tim Ma. I'm the executive chef of Eaton DC, but also the executive chef of American Sun here in Eaton. And I have a very special weekend that's happening this weekend. My family, the Ma family, has an exhibit going into the Smithsonian American History Museum here in Washington, D.C. And the exhibit is called The Migrant Table within the food exhibit in Smithsonian. And the whole ideal behind it is connecting family, food, and culture together. And so, like, we were the ideal, I don't know if we were the ideal, but we were the right people at the right time to be part of this exhibit. And that restaurants were a part of our family from my generation up to my parents, up to our very famous and the best Uncle Paul, who ran a very successful restaurant called Paul Ma's Kitchen in Yorktown Heights, New York. And we're just here to kind of tell a little bit of the story of how we got here and how we... I'm sorry?
Funny stories.
And we're going to tell some funny stories at the end, but we would like to tell the story of why American Sun is American Sun and how we ended up here. So we have we have three generations of the Ma family here. So the generation below us, my kids, Charlotte, Chase, and Camden. And then we have our generation, which is like me, Ivana, Pauline, Eileen, Joy, Jane, John, Amy, and Andy, who some are here and some are not. And we have the last three remaining Ma members, Cecilia, Paul, and Tim. And then their siblings. Ivana, can you let them know?
Yes, right here.
It's okay. We can edit this post. Okay. It doesn't matter. So we can make it super casual. So, yeah, we're recording live. So it's fine. You don't have to record. And so American Sun, the name of the restaurant, is based on my interpretation of how we grew up in Arkansas, where Celia still lives, and our parents, our parents met, and where me and Ivana were born. And so when we were born in Arkansas, it was in 1976 and 1978, and it was very racist, to say the least. And me and Ivana had experiences where, like, we were chased to school by not so nice people, and rocks thrown at us, at least in my perspective, bricks thrown, and then we had like bricks thrown through our window in the middle of the night, and my parents didn't realize that a brick was thrown through the window until the morning. And so I tell this story because we went through that, and in my perspective as a 4-year-old, which is super intelligent, was that our parents began to raise us as American as they knew how. So they stopped speaking Chinese to us. They started cooking American food for us. And they thought that if we were acclimated or didn't have an accent or acted very American, that they would look past what we looked like, right? They wouldn't look at our eyes. They wouldn't look at anything else. And so, and then we became American. And so by the time we were a teenager, and one of the moments that I tell, and may or may not be true, and that's what they're going to tell us about, is as a teenager at a Chinese New Year celebration, my mom introduced me to a Chinese person as my American son, Timmy. And that is where the name of the restaurant came from. It was like we were as American as can be, except for in appearance, and that's where the name of this restaurant comes from. And so most immigrants can relate to a story like that. Most immigrants of our generation, and so, like, I would love to ask my parents, and I think we've talked about this before, but we haven't talked about this publicly or even at each other, looking at each other in the eyes. Is that perspective true?
About the American Sun?
Or about how you raised us?
How you wanted us to acclimate to be American as much as possible.
The truth was, when you guys were little, we lived in Newport, Arkansas, remember?
Mm-hmm.
We didn't live in Little Rock,
Yep.
Arkansas yet. And that was where when Timmy was born, and you only about 1.5 years old, 2 years old. We were the only Chinese family in the town. That little town was 8,000 people, total population. And plus the 4 of us will be 8,004. So,
that's fine.
the first day we sent you guys to the daycare there so I could go find a job and start working again. Then Timmy's picture was on the town's newspaper on the front page.
Nothing's changed.
And it was like the first Chinese family in Newport, Arkansas. And their little boy, first day at the daycare, and he was crying. And the daycare center's lady was holding him, and he was crying. That picture was putting on the newspaper. When there was nobody else can speak Chinese to you, your kids, and you send him to this daycare, nobody speaks Chinese to him and scare him to cry like that. As a mother, then I realized we are in America, and we live in this town of 8,000 people. And what should I do with my kids? Should I still raise them as Chinese and go out and face a very foreign world and be scared? Or should I try to make them more American so they can fit in? That's when we started, kind of train you guys to also get used to English speaking. But after that, there were other stories that after we moved out of that little town, we moved into the capital city of Arkansas, which is Little Rock, Arkansas. That was another story. So I stopped it here. Let you guys know why you guys started not like other Chinese kids. You were sent to other Chinese kids will always go to Chinese school to learn Chinese and to get used to Chinese culture and civilization and customs, but not the two of you, because the two of you were raised really in a very different place. That's why you were so different. And later on, when it was too late to reverse, to make you to speak Chinese, and that was another story. Then I finally realized, I'm raising 2 American kids, not Chinese kids.
I mean, that's kind of the story that I tell everybody, is that we were raised American, and that's...
I always tell this story about how mom and dad met. Do you not know this?
No idea.
Okay.
Who are you?
So I tell the story about how mom, as a very good traditional Chinese woman, wanted to...
This is not my phone.
Oh, this is my phone.
Where's my
What?
phone?
What's happening? Oh, okay. I talk about the story about how, like, as a traditional Chinese woman, and how, you were just raised on rote mechanics. You were applying to graduate schools alphabetically because there was no sense of stack rank for you. You just knew that you wanted to go to America for graduate school. And then dad had served in the military and he was going to undergraduate. And he just ended up at the University of Arkansas because his brother-in-law was a professor there. And his sister, Cecilia, says, come to Arkansas. I can get you into undergraduate. And so dad's there for undergraduate, for an undergraduate program. You're there because you applied alphabetically to all the schools in America. And the first one you went to, which was Arkansas, which means you didn't get into Alabama or Alaska, but I'm not gonna go there. But you go to Arkansas serendipitously, by the way, and the two of you show up at the Chinese Student Association dance at the University of Arkansas, and you're the only 2 single students Chinese students on campus. You have no choice but to date each other. Luckily for Timmy and I, it worked out. And you got married, I don't know, 9 months later. And then you started to have your family. And I talk about Arkansas being this really romantic place around how our parents just serendipitously met each other for the first time. You by the way, you were both born in wartime China. You grew up in Taipei, Taiwan, a very small island, but never knew each other until Arkansas. America brought you together.
So the question to Joy and Jane, like, I'm the youngest, right? So I don't know too much about everybody's upbringing, but how much of this is similar to how you guys were born?
I didn't think I was Chinese. I always thought I was American until the little kid said, Chinese, Japanese, dirty knees, look at these. And I was like, oh, I'm what? And then being at, you're dancing in a bar and the song comes on and says, turning Japanese, and everybody starts pointing at you and dancing at you. And until that point, I thought I was American. I didn't think I was Chinese at all. So I don't know about you, Joy.
I don't think this is similar at all. Only because the strength and the courage that Uncle Timmy and Aunt Jen had for you, Timmy, and Ivana, is that they wanted to create an environment that was safe and that helped you flourish. And to do that is to really merge these two cultures of Chinese into an American situation and environment. They prepared you, and look where you've come because of that. I think it's wonderful to see truly the strength and the courage that you both have, Ivana and Timmy, to pursue your dreams, to take what you have from your family, to make that and bring that into an American environment and say, hey, look, America, this is who I am. This is what I have merged between the two. And as an American embodies everyone, whether you're African American, whether you're Asian, whether you're brown or yellow or white. This is American. And so American Son, to me, and I hope for many people, represent what merging cultures can bring in a very positive and wonderful way. And because of our parents who support us in this, we're able to accomplish this through others, whether it be our immediate family, our spouses, our significant others, our children. They always teach us new ways of reinventing ourselves to bring such fresh new ideas to today's environment. And kudos to you, Timmy, to Joey, to Ivana, and to Aunt Jenny, Uncle Timmy, to just always support that and say, hey, this is your dream, go for it, don't stop, don't be afraid, go for it. And this is where we are now. So at the museum, it's just flipping awesome, like going, oh my God, you guys are behind glass, and the little Chinese calendar and the little menu and the welcome to this restaurant in handwritten letters is there. And thank you for bringing us all together for that.
Wait, let's go back to the parents being supportive of it. So it's like
Sorry about that.
All right, so we can turn this to funny stories at this point about whatever restaurant. And I can start to tell like one of my favorite stories about Uncle Paul and Uncle Paul's restaurant, because at this point it doesn't matter, right?
It always matters.
All right. So my
Oh, I know what you're gonna tell.
yeah.
Oh, wait, tell.
And like the legacy of this is whatever. Like for Eaton Radio, they're not going to use this. They're going to take that first part. They're going to relate it to American Son, and it's going to go into the archives or whatever, or they'll play it on something.
No.
The rest of this is actually for us. Like we can edit however we want to at this point. I can start and stop it.
Can we keep?
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure about that, but we're probably going to get the raw footage and blah blah blah. And so. So I'll start off by telling my favorite Uncle Paul story, where as I was trying to open Maple Ave, he told me about the health department in Westchester County. And so he's like, hey, like, let me tell you about how to handle the health department. Like one time the health department came and I immediately walked up to Mr. Rogers, whatever his name was. Mr. Rogers, oh, good, so great to see you. And put $200 in his hand. And it's like,
Yeah, Timmy.
yeah, no, this is Uncle Paul, not me.
This is not Timmy.
This is like back in the 70s. This is like, Mr. Rogers, here's $200. Like, great to see you. See you next month. And then Mr. Rogers turns to Uncle Paul and is like, Paul, you're a good man. Take this money back, and like, this is not going to be a problem. And so he continues to like go around, and somehow they pass health inspection. Next night, I don't know if this is true or not, but like, all of a sudden the restaurant's not very busy, and the rats continue to climb between the first and second floor, and they don't, they're not climbing on the walls, they're climbing on the drywall on top of things. They're running back and forth, and they're making a lot of noise, and the guests can hear them. And Aunt Linda comes down and is like, Paul, the rats are making so much noise. Like, we can't continue to serve food in this environment. What do we do? Uncle Paul like looks like left and then looks right, and he's like, turn the music up. Oh my God. Problem solved. And that was one of the very first lessons that I got into restaurant ownership. It was like how to run my restaurant.
Disclosure: we never had to turn our music off.
Yes, we took other lessons away from him, but not that one. But anyways, that was one of my favorite stories.
Wait, have Eileen or Pauline tell a story?
Yeah, either of you ready to tell a story? Like one of your favorite stories.
I mean, Pauline, you had to do all the receipts and like the
Wait,
record.
can someone tell a Dan Rather story?
Mm-hmm.
Who can tell the Dan Rather story the
Only
best?
my dad can, because we were
Damn
there.
Jane, you can.
Because I can.
Gene, were you there?
Please,
I wasn't
can you
there.
Let me tell it?
But you can tell it.
Dan
I
Rather.
wasn't
Anyone?
there.
Dan Rather.
Dan
someone,
Rather.
please, because I need this story
The-
to live.
we never thought in a million years that his restaurant and the Dine and Learn. So for if you don't know what Dine and Learn is, he created this model of, instead of having a restaurant, having you come and have a teaching school where you learned about the food and how to cook, and you also sat down for dinner. And he also said it's a better tax situation because you're not a restaurant, you're a school. So the Dine and Learn was all this great business model for those reasons as well. And as he started to book
I love
people,
how at this point you're like business model.
that was for a poo. So when we were talking about the reservations, it just got out to like 3 months, 6 months, and then before you know it, it was like a year or a 2-year waiting list. So this whole concept of scarcity is that scarcity drove demand, and all of a sudden people wanted, the minute they sat down for their dinner, they would book their next dinner because they didn't want to be behind a 2-year waiting list. So one night someone called in and they were asking for a reservation, and Aunt Linda picked up the phone, and she said, well, we're sorry, we're 2 years out, and he said, well, this is Dan Rather, and she said, yeah, I'm
Burt Parks.
Burt, was it Burt Parks?
Burt Parks.
You should tell it, Eileen. Tell the rest of it. So she says she doesn't know. She said, I'm sorry, but it's still 2 years out. And he said, but didn't he say you don't understand? I'm trying to bring my friend Dan Rather, and I've been telling him about your place and your concept, and I really want. And listen, I'm really sorry, but it's 2 years. and I don't think she was aware at the time that it was Burt Parks and Dan Rather.
Who he was.
No, like as far as she was concerned, she was
Following the rules.
Following the rules.
Like Pauline.
She had
That's right.
I think.
Yeah, so the Burt Park story, I think she turned him away, but fortunately, I guess they might have called back because I think we found a picture, May. Didn't we find we found a picture of my
That's
of Burt Parks in the restaurant, and we were looking through some photos and stuff. But the Dan Rather story was separate. The Dan Rather story happened because my dad became friends with Bernie Gannis, who was an editor or a salesman at the CBS Magazine Network. And back then, the CBS Magazine Network was in charge of a lot of different magazines like Tennis World and some other sports and different magazines. And so Bernie Gannis used my dad's food and stuff to entertain the advertising executives, specifically for large auto companies. So he also had a connection, though, with Dan Rather's either PR or agent or someone. And so that's how the Dan Rather connection happened. It was all through Mr. Bernie Gannis. And Bernie Gannis also invited my dad to do these things called Mandarin Feasts. So my dad was invited to Detroit multiple times, actually, to entertain advertising executives and auto executives, including Mr. Roger Smith of Roger and Me fame, the chairman and CEO of General Motors. So my dad actually met Roger Smith. Roger Smith told him how great the food was. In our research, we uncovered letters from all these bigwigs, from Volkswagen, from GM, from
Kraft.
Chevrolet, about the food they ate and thanking my dad for his food and everything. So it's kind of really amazing. Like, I always thought he was bragging about all this stuff and that he was lying. You know what I mean?
Because he was a little.
I just thought he was exaggerating about it and that it wasn't really true. And then when I saw these letters and read what people wrote and the fact that they really were thrilled when Bernie Gannis would bring my dad back year after year, I was like, oh, it really is true. People really did love his food. When I did research through the guest book, I actually found the name of Dan Rather's, not Dan Rather, Dan Rather's agent or whoever that guy was. It was like a CBS like producer or something, you know, who must have been the connection to Dan Rather. My dad was disappointed because Dan Rather that day was covering something with Ronald Reagan or whatever, like, and so he was late.
It's the Doug DeLuca of Dan Rather.
He is the Doug DeLuca.
Yeah.
I don't know who Doug DeLuca is.
Doug DeLuca is, for our family, the current, he's the Jimmy Kimmel producer. And I connection for a lot of us. He's just super relevant.
Oh, okay. Man behind the man.
Yeah.
But my brother brought
Yes.
my uncle in to do consulting for Kraft. So he actually did. Do you remember what her name was? I don't remember who it was, but
Bonnie?
he
No.
was it?
Bonnie?
Well, we'll have to
She
look
was
up the
blonde.
name for
Bonnie
Joey.
Raitt.
But they were trying to help them understand, like, how do we address the Asian market, and if you were at Kraft and if you were at this, these are people who really were still thinking Chinese people eat egg foo young, and I have never had egg foo young in my entire life.
neither.
And so Uncle Paul comes in and tries to explain to them about why rice doesn't work in little packets, why it's important, like the rice maker and the whole process of rice was important. He explained why, it was just this whole incredible paradigm shift on what Chinese food in people who were American, how they thought of Chinese food versus what he was bringing to them. And what we think back then, he was so ahead of his time with no MSG, pure, using vegetables and using everything from raw ingredients, and it was more vegetables than meat because it was also cheaper, but it was a lot of use more vegetables and only use a little bit of meat. But it was ahead of his time because now it's the same thing. Your ratios of how you eat, what you eat clean, don't use MSG. He said sometimes he would use MSG, but it was only for a secret. It was like
No. We used
Frequent secret.
chicken stock, Campbell's chicken stock.
Made from MSG.
Made from MSG.
It's just a little footnote.
Chicken, mostly MSG.
Well, I remember years ago that he was also hired by General Foods
Yes.
to. Can you hear me from here?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, to develop recipes for frozen foods, and I remember being in the kitchen where he was developing like sweet and sour or something or another, and then I don't even know what came of that.
I found letters that were not letters of understanding, but just memos back and forth between him and either General Mills or General Foods about starting like a frozen food Chinese line. And he was working with them on recipes or whatever. And he said he was amazed because he would create something and it would cost, let's say, $4 to create. And they could do it for like 40 cents with their chemicals or whatever. He was using real ingredients.
Yeah.
They were creating the same taste.
Yeah.
They would have them taste it. And it was exactly the same, but they were producing it at 40 cents versus $4, something like that. But yeah, I found letters, all those memos back and forth. So it's like it was real.
Yeah,
It's history.
we actually took so I'm from Anderson UCLA for my MBA, and we asked my uncle to do consultation. So we said, hey, we would love for you to help be our guide and be our translator for our event. So our project was about the internet in China and about censorship. So we go and as first we get on the plane, and he looks at me and he says, well, you have my passport, right? And I said, or my visa. And I said, visa? You have your visa, right? So we're both sitting on the plane going, oh my gosh, neither one of us have your visa. So we had to do an emergency acceptance of him by the university, Beijing University, to try to get him in, because we totally botched his visa. But we get in, and he becomes this consultant for us at each one of the universities for food. And he's like, I know all the places, I know all the restaurants. And then all of a sudden he goes up to the guy who's directing traffic. He's like, hey, I have a bunch of people who I need to take to a restaurant. It just needs to have a clean bathroom and napkins. That's it. And this was like the entire trip was a little bit along his lines. It was the best, and it was so much fun for me. It was the best because all my friends now, they call him Uncle Paul, and we have so many stories about him. About these guys would say, oh my God, these girls, like, what do I do? I think they're trying to say this. And, my uncle's basically like, hey, we're in the red light district of Beijing. They actually are looking for a little bit more. They really don't like you. So, like, this is my uncle who's trying to train them on what was happening in Beijing and Shanghai at the time. And we just it was so memorable. We had a blast.
Didn't my father translate some big meetings for you, but he really did a subpar job?
Yes, we were at the government censorship office, so they were actually doing censorship, and they were also doing movie production. And he was the head of all. I think when they think you come from another country, all of a sudden you're like a big exec in a chair with hot tea in your hands. When all we were was a bunch of students, and we were just MBA students. And so they said, this long, we are so honored to have people from UCLA and from California and from learning about what we do. And he went on and on and on. And my uncle goes, they're very glad to meet you. I was the only one who spoke Chinese, so all my friends were like, wow, that was really nice of them. And I was like, oh my God. And then they started putting in technical terms, and they started talking about like internet, and we started talking about broadband and about censorship. And then my uncle would just be like, he'd be saying it in Chinese to all of us, and we didn't understand because the language is very difficult because it was all new verbiage. Like internet verbiage was very new, as well as like all the technology stuff was new. And it was unbelievable. It was such an unbelievable experience.
I have to Uncle Paul to translate internet. Can I tell some computer?
Yeah, tell them.
That one day Daddy, I got a phone call from Uncle Paul when they still live in Chantilly house, an older house, and Daddy was contractor then, very busy. They pay him several $100s an hour. He had to finish something within short term. But Uncle Paul said, I lost my file and I have to have it right now. And so Daddy went there. No, Daddy tried to solve the problem over the phone so he doesn't have to drive all the way to him and then come back to his work. So Daddy told Uncle Paul, say, move your mouse. He said, okay, I got my mouse. Daddy say, click on the right key. And he said, yeah, click on the right key. Click on the left key. And he said, nothing moves. So finally, Daddy couldn't get him to do anything to make things change and work. So finally, he had to go to his house. He said, give me an hour, I finish something, then I'll get there. So he finally left his office, went to his house, and he was trying to show him how to do things. Say, where's your mouse? He said, here's on my mouse. So Tim said, click on the right key. You do this. You know what he does? He moved the whole mouse to the right side of the computer. Then hit the mouse on the desk.
No. The best was I was at Uncle Paul and Aunt Linda's house last night, and mom was introduced. I was trying to do a video conference, And Mom goes, just make sure you plug in your computer. And I was like, of course I would plug in my computer. She goes, okay, because Uncle Paul the other day asked Daddy to come over to drive 45 minutes to Uncle Paul's house because they were like, my computer's not working.
No, the new TV is not working.
Oh, the new TV isn't working. And so my dad goes over to Uncle Paul's house and he plugs the TV into the electrical outlet. And he's like, hey, it works.
So you say let him translate the internet terminology. I was like, oh no.
In China, he invented the internet.
John and Tammy always tell the funny story about how Tammy invited my dad to come meet with her boss, who was like some bigwig at, again, Kraft. Very tough lady, blonde lady. And my dad has a soft spot for blondes. You know, he always wanted to marry Marilyn Monroe. And for her hair and for her body. Anyway, so I guess Tammy tells a story
The
that
American dream.
Tammy introduces my dad to this blonde head woman, like very, very senile woman, and my dad was like, oh, you look like Marilyn Monroe, you're so beautiful. And she's like this tough lady. Tammy was mortified, but my dad charmed her. Like, he gets away with saying this stuff.
Yeah.
That's completely inappropriate if you actually just like transcribed it, but he gets away with it and people are okay with it. You know what I mean? It's incredible to me. Incredible to me.
How?
I don't know. How does he do it? I don't know.
It's like, here's $200, help us.
Well, let me talk about how he got my friends and me to paint the whole restaurant over New Year's Eve one night. So,
All right, so one of you
Jen
have
and
to...
Joanne have to please.
Who is...
I have my high school
Or
friends
both
here,
of you.
Jen and
There's
Joanne.
two
Jen.
microphones. Like,
Oh, here's you guys tell the story. I don't even remember.
It was.
I
We were in
remember
high
doing
school,
it.
right? It was New Year's Eve, and we had, of course, nothing to do because we were big dorks, and we thought it sounded like the greatest idea ever to paint the restaurant after it closed, which was like late, right? Because it was.
Go over the relationship to
Okay.
Uncle Paul.
Okay.
Like,
How old
go
were we?
through the relationship to Uncle Paul.
Well, these are my good high school friends. I've known these.
We're not the bad ones.
These women, young women. Well, back then we were young women since
We were little.
seventh
Yeah,
grade.
yeah.
One since we were little. These are my good friends, and I guess my father, thought he wanted us to do something on New Year's Eve, so he offered that we could make $50 and paint the whole restaurant after it closed. So at least we'd be doing something on New Year's Eve.
Yeah, but it closed like late. It was we were very excited. Like we thought it was like our idea of a fun night out.
It's New Year's Eve.
Yes.
In a restaurant.
We'd be up all night. We're gonna make $50. It'd be so
This
fun.
year.
And it started out very fun, right? Like we were kind of into it and painting. At least Joanne was. The rest of us were kind
Yeah,
of
I think
watching,
we've
maybe.
come to the realization that I was actually the only serious one who took that job serious, which is surprising when we have Pauline there.
The rule person.
But yeah, I just remember yelling and screaming because everyone else was sitting and talking, and I'm like, guys, we have 15 more hours of painting.
I think what made it difficult is that the color scheme my dad chose was red and black. Very dark colors. So you can't just do one coat of a black color. Like Joanne, I remember at 3 a.m. I was watching her paint this one door frame over and over because it was black paint. You know, you
1
have
a.m.?
to. No, 3 a.m.
Like we started probably
at 10 p.m.
Yeah, like after the restaurant closed.
Why?
Because we had to do it when it was
Because we
closed, and
thought
then they
it
were
was gonna
closed
be
New Year's
fun.
Day, so like the fumes
And my
would.
dad
Need
asked,
someplace to go.
see, this is how my dad convinces people
Also,
to do
where was
stuff.
your dad, though?
He was home.
I'm sure he's at Mahjong. I'm sure he was playing Mahjong somewhere. They were not there. We were.
Somehow it was told
It was
to be
really
like, oh,
fun
you're gonna be
until
up
like
all
the sun.
night.
Yeah, we were gonna be up all night. It was
you're all
cool,
night.
and, you know, like.
You're
But then the
16 years
sun
old.
came up, and Pauline's on the phone with her dad, and all of a sudden she's speaking Chinese, so I have no idea what she's saying. And all of a sudden I just see her going, and the map. She's turning it. It's upside down. So we painted whatever was red was black.
The color scheme.
Yeah, it was like total.
So they basically had to hire someone to
To fix,
repaint,
yeah,
to
to fix
repaint
the
the
mess
whole.
that we
Oh my God.
So he basically paid all of us whatever it was, a few dollars,
whatever it was.
and And then he had to go hire someone to basically do the
We
whole thing.
totally
I
messed
have
it
to
up.
ask him why he thought this would be a good idea for us to do.
I think we wanted to do it.
We wanted to do it, I
think
think,
we
but the
thought it
map
was
was
gonna be
upside
fun.
down. Was like
Like
the
a sleepover,
yeah.
but with paint.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what we thought of it. Yes.
Joy, did you want to tell something? A story? No.
Joy has a painting story too because Joy was
The garage.
the fabulous
Joy,
19-year-old
Joy, come on,
fancy
come on.
Joy, yeah, tell the story.
Come
about
on,
the
Joy.
painting.
Come on.
Okay, this is a little embarrassing, but I'm going to expose myself here. So I'm ready to go to college, and I'm working really hard to make a lot of money to get to school, and Uncle Paul gives me a job. So I go there, and I get to live with them all through the summer. And Uncle Paul and Nailen are really wonderful, and I get to get closer to Pauline and Eileen. And poor Hua Hua, I went through all that whole thing. And so Uncle Paul's decided, and he just said to me right outside today, he goes, "Do you remember when I made you paint the garage?" I go, "Yes, I do remember that." He goes, "Do you remember the ducks?" I go, "I'll never forget the ducks." So basically what he did, he's like, he wanted to teach me a lesson. So he made me go paint the garage in the middle of the summer by myself, in between working at the restaurant. I'm like, okay, well, if you're going to make me do this, I'm going to get my bathing suit, at least get a tan. So I'm like out there painting the garage and the bathing suit, and I'm like, okay, I'm done. I'm going to go chill out. I'm going to hang out on the patio and just, catch some rays. The frickin' ducks. I wake up, chickens. All of a sudden, they start pooping all around me. I'm like, what is this? I can't believe this. Is this what it takes to get through school, to work for my uncle? And at the end of the day, it was really like he's just like trying to show me, you got to work hard, right? You got to work hard. You got to do these things. And he goes, I'll teach you a lesson. You're just like your grandmother. I'm going to teach you a lesson. Like, okay. But he taught me a lesson, and it was, it was the best because for a moment, I say it's the best only because I felt like someone cared enough about me to pay attention to me, to teach me how to be better, how to navigate, how to get through different things in life, whether it's painting garage, whether it's navigating around duck geese, but it's like, it was sustainable, it's organic. I'm like, okay, you are way ahead of your time. But yeah, it was memorable to this day where I can tell the story and say, like, I am so grateful that Uncle Paul was there for me and did that for me. Ducks. Duck poop.
So we have like 30 minutes left, and I told Joey to go get everybody else from downstairs for anybody else to tell a story.
Charlotte, tell a story.
Well, Charlotte wants to tell a story. So Charlotte is my daughter. She's 9 years old, the next generation. So Charlotte wants to tell a story about me and Dad and Yaya.
But Dad hasn't told any stories.
Well, that's what's next.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Go ahead, Charlotte.
So, when Daddy was younger, he went fishing with Yaya, and he went fishing, although when Yaya reeled in the fishing hook and went, it wouldn't come out. It's because it got stuck in Daddy's head.
That's why Daddy has no hair. I blame it on Dad. Yeah.
And then when that happened, when he went to the hospital, the doctor said that he looked like an alien, and that's how they got it to pull it out.
No. I was there. So like, yeah. Casts the reel, and then when he flicks it forward, the fishing hook got caught in your dad's head.
Good. You're good.
Oh, okay.
Have Dad.
Yeah.
and then your dad. Oh, good. Your dad goes to the hospital, and the surgeon goes, "Oh, big catch of the day!" That's awesome. Yeah.
I walked through the hospital. I was like, "Big catch of the day! Oh, that's a new one." All right. So, like, one of the last two things I want to do before we finish up here is like, one is like, I would love Dad. I would also love Gugu to do this, to tell their favorite story of Uncle Paul.
Or Nai Nai and Yeah.
or Nana area, or like any family story, because we have like the next thing is a much bigger family story piece. But like Dad, I would love for you to tell any of your favorite stories of Uncle Paul that none of us, or maybe some of us know, or maybe none of us know, or maybe all of us know, but like.
Okay, so he started out with a dish. Don't forget the 3 dishes that your grandma passed on, right? The dumpling, and then the arger salad, and there's one more.
Jajangmyeon?
1, 2, 3 shrimp.
1, 2, 3 shrimp. So those 3.
Mantou?
No, just those 3. He started out. He started out the restaurant with 3 dishes, and then all the others following all made up from kind of American food. Those 3 are the true Chinese food. So that's where he started. And don't forget, he had everybody work in the restaurant, not just for cheap labor.
That's the only way he made money.
Right. No,
Doesn't
not,
exist anymore.
not for the money, but for training all of you learn how to run a restaurant. He doesn't intend to have any of you to run a restaurant, but just do it as an experience in life, right?
I was still new addition to the Mars family. I was even brought in to work for that Yorktown Heights restaurant.
That was Paul Ma's kitchen.
Palma's Kitchen. Only once. After that, I got fired. He never called me back.
Ruthless. It's like
You know what he's. Oh, if I could just share quickly, one of the things that he's taught me, and this is from working in the restaurant, is just to open with a smile. You know, like because that was a big thing with him, right? He would tell everybody,
Yes.
smile, smile,
Yeah.
smile, smile. Like,
Yeah.
like he'd say it in a really angry way, but that was like a.
Wait. Let's not lose that. He would say it in a very angry way.
Because he was stressed out, right? But it was like an important kind of rule of the restaurant that you had to smile, and I actually feel like I've gotten farther in life because I've learned how to smile first, right? To in getting stuff done. So.
Yeah. That's how he charm everybody.
So he started out very small, and he kept a small circle. He never tried to grow into an enterprise or whatever. He just running a family restaurant, and he always kept the same principle as running a small restaurant.
But I have to say, like, we did more than just restaurants. I remember the county fairs that we had to work. The Grange Fair, the Hudson River Clearwater Revival Fair, the Poultry Fair, whatever. Like, we worked those booths. We worked a Chinese community center, Chinese New Year party for like 3 to 5 years. I had once had to wear a papier-mâché pig head because it was Year of the Pig, so we wanted to
This is why you hated it.
Well, can you guys blame me? I mean, we put on this papier-mâché pink pig head, sit in one of those carriers, and get carried into the room, get out, pull off the head and say, 恭喜发财,恭喜发财,新年快乐. Put the pig head back on, and then get back in the kitchen and start serving. But
that's still,
I was 14 years old?
Yeah, but that's still a family restaurant, right? He's not running an enterprise.
Right. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes. All these things were little things. Many little things.
He keep it small.
Yes.
But then he does his best. So that's why he gets
successful.
Get successful and get people to accept him so well.
I just remember being in the Chinese store that was on the second floor, and Timmy and I would be like, we're gonna eat all the white rabbit candy that we can. And you and Eileen would be like, no!
See,
Sounds like me.
Sounds like a family business, right? It's all in the family.
Well, say that's what the validation of this weekend is. Right?
Yes,
So,
the family.
For one, to see how many people have come down here.
Since Daddy brought up Nai Nai's 3 dishes for Uncle Paul to start this business, I want to say why I think why the food becomes so important and is so good through Ma's generation. It started with Nai Nai. Nai Nai was born from a very rich family. Even when they left mainland China and went to Taiwan, the whole government was like bankrupt, right? And Taiwan, everybody lives in Taiwan are very poor. But the Ma's family, your Nai Nai, still brought her personal chef with her from mainland China all the way to Taiwan. Live with them. So whenever Nai Nai play mahjong, that this personal chef, family chef, can cook a banquet for all her friends.
Sounds like the Taj Mahal in
Yes.
Atlantic City.
No, so good food has been through the Ma's generations, and Nai Nai never had to cook because she was from a rich family, and even during that difficult time, she still had her personal chef. And as year goes on, they run out of their personal savings in Taiwan. They couldn't afford this family chef in their family anymore. So Ye Nai Nai decided to let this chef leave their home. Told him that, we can't really afford a chef anymore, this family with so many kids, So the chef left them, went to Taipei, opened a little roadside food stand to begin with, and then later on, and opened his own restaurant, became a rich restaurant owner. But every time, as long as Nai Nai needs him, just call him, give one phone call, he will be there and cook dinner for Nai Nai. So Nai Nai told me that she learned a lot of good dish from that family chef, and she probably passed that on to Uncle Paul.
Like that, we talked about this the other night at family dinner, but talk about what your generation, which is only maybe like 5 of you left, right? How that carries forward to us. In terms of food is one thing, but in terms of everything else, you think about like this generation of children or the last named generation is what we talked about.
And like this generation of children trying to put a cork in the wine bottle.
I mean, he's a ma.
I just want to kind of expound on the whole initial dishes that he had. So when we worked for Uncle Paul, Jane and I would be in the prep in the back. And if Timmy, you have this on your menu, let me tell you, anyone out there needs to try the agar salad.
You got to take into account there's a big disconnect between Uncle Paul and me, like in terms of like I didn't grow up cooking with them. I didn't grow up anything.
Right.
I didn't learn to cook until I was 30. My dad showed me how to hold a knife before I went to culinary school at 30. So there is a big disconnect between our family cuisine and the cuisine that I carry forward and that these guys hopefully carry forward, right? So like this is actually a discovery period at this point.
Which is really exciting.
Yeah.
But don't forget, Daddy and me, we ran a restaurant in Arkansas, Conway, Arkansas too.
I tell a story of it. You want to hear it?
Do you ever want to see Chinese like really weird with a southern drawl? This is it. Unbelievable.
Oh, you want me to actually? That was just an interjection. Like the story of why I became a chef was because, again, this is the difference between reality and my perception at 2 years old. Was you had a restaurant when I was, I don't know what age. I remember running through the restaurant. That's all I remember. I remember the restaurant being successful in the first 2 years. Right. And then I remember you having a very good chef that helped you open the very first restaurant in Conway, Arkansas. And then the chef saw the success, and then he opened the second Chinese restaurant across the street from you guys in Conway, Arkansas. I embellished a little bit. I'm like, in all of Arkansas. Like, these are the only 2 restaurants that exist. Like, my parents and then the chef. and then my dad converting home cooking into professional cooking and not being the same thing, right? And so the demise of the restaurant is based on like the food, right? The food not being cooked by a professional chef and the food being cooked by very good home chefs, which is what the Ma family is, right? Like we're all like Uncle Paul, like my dad, everybody are very good home chefs. They can cook for the whole family, what we'll witness tomorrow. But professional cooking is a whole different thing. So my story of why I became a chef was because of this. Was my story at 26 was with Ivana in a sushi restaurant in LA. She doesn't remember it. I remember it, but it was
I was sober.
a very significant portion of that was we were in a sushi restaurant. I was like, I want to open a restaurant. Brian turns to me. I was like, regardless of whatever happens, friends and family will support you through the first year. And I was like, fine.
We gave you money.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah, we gave you a lot.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Right now, I need some money.
It's a whole different thing.
We'll give you money too.
Okay, good. You're nearby.
But before you continue, but your generation, your food and your cooking is totally different than the traditional Chinese food.
Exactly.
And that's the only
Business
reason we'll
cooking.
let you go on like this is you can start a new trend, right? We don't want you to follow the old trend. It doesn't work anymore. So you had a new trend. That's why you continue.
Yeah, this is the perspective is like of why I became a chef was I didn't want that to happen. But the only way I learned to cook was different from what your food was or our generation knows. And so that's where we're at, like a crossroads at this point. It's like, especially like something like today, whereas like we were as a family being recognized by two different generations and two different styles of cooking, right? It's like Uncle Paul and your style of cooking, right? Like that I don't even know how to cook that. And so that's what's interesting right now is like, and then I took that entire story and I cooked an entire different generation of food, right? Like I always tell the stories like they're like your parents must be so proud of your cuisine and blah blah blah. I was like they hate my cooking and what I do to the food. Like
not true.
It's not true, but it's like if I showed you like my mapo tofu, you'd just be like, "What is this?" It's like
your kanji is really
Different. Very different.
But if people like your kanji, that's fine.
but Chinese people,
If other people like your kanji, it's totally fine.
but we don't. But so like that's where we battle right now, right? It's like we are taking and.
Camden, are you drinking wine?
Oh my god.
It's like a whole different level of parenting these days too. But like how
empty.
Oh, okay.
what we do with food and what you guys do with food, to be honest, are same in principles. Like, and this is what I always argue. This is what I always say. Even I think I said this at the presentation that we did last year with Uncle Paul. It's like I don't understand like exactly how you guys cook, but we cook in the same way. Ultimately, right?
If you don't mind, I mean, Timmy, here's the thing. You can't replace what your dad, what our grandfather, grandmother brought with them out of the heart and like how they cook, how they prepare, how they cut. But your definition of what that is in the American environment is so incredibly refreshing in the whole wellness area. It's like, this is what we need, to have those traditions redefined in a way that we can appreciate and hear the story, but it can only come through your parents, through the generations that came over from China.
I love it's like it rings like really true. I wish we had more of an opportunity for them to tell the stories and that we can capture it of this generation, because we spend Sunday dinners talking about these things and like talking about. And so really like the last thing that I want to talk about, because we have probably like 12 minutes left and Camden drinking out of wine glass. Water. Was, and most importantly, you guys, we have no generation names left. So our kids are...
No, they still do.
They're Quinn.
They're
Quinn.
Quinn. Yeah.
After Queen, there's no more.
Yeah, after Quinn.
Camden.
I have to think about it.
No more.
Yeah.
You mean there's no more Ma's?
No more.
No, no.
No more.
He is a bean generation. So every generation has a middle name called generation name. Besides the family name of Ma,
Yeah.
then there's a
Generation
name.
Oh,
So
okay.
he is Bin and they are Queen. And then after that, there's no more.
What he means is every family has a family tree,
Mm-hmm.
and each generation have their generation name, and our ancestor only build the family tree to this generation. After them, there's no more generation name. So it would be up to us, the older generation currently living,
To define it.
to continue the family tree.
But we're debating about this is American son, right?
Yeah.
Why should we just keep on carrying Chinese traditions since you're American? There's no need to continue.
That's not true.
I don't agree with
I don't
that.
agree.
Yeah.
Because that's what makes it unique.
Right.
That's what makes it so special. Is because Uncle Timmy, in American Son, has been able to take that and merge the two.
And we're not.
And this is a whole new level.
And we're Chinese American. We're not.
Right.
We're
So,
not just American.
like the big question is like, how do we carry forward, right? It's like, could you guys name it? Probably not. Like I can't name it. Like I don't even know what we even do, so.
They should name it.
Well,
I guess I would want to interject and
Yeah.
say, right, that those, and we should, and I do value those cultures, right, and those traditions, but we should also recognize that they come from tradition, right, that is informed by both heterocentrism and patriarchy,
Yeah.
right, and so while we might want to figure out how to embrace the principles behind it, right, it's probably a refreshing opportunity to figure out how to conceive of a naming that embraces those traditions, but also kind of values sort of where we're going.
Yeah.
also consider like none of this generation are full Chinese anymore, right?
The subject of this
Look at that, they're all mixed.
I mean,
Yeah.
look at the entire generation behind us, even like Herbal Foods generation, right? Like,
Yeah.
Herbal Foods generation, but below that is just Marvin, right? It's like Marvin has
Marvin
mixed
has
kids.
2 sons.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
half Chinese, half Italian,
Yeah.
half Chinese, half Salvadorian. Like, we don't have anything that is full Chinese. So in the same vein as like, how do we carry forward full Chinese? We don't, because we don't have.
Hey, can I share a news flash with you guys? Chris had his genetics read at Ancestry.com.
Mm-hmm.
We are not full Chinese either. So we actually have blood, like he looked in his genetics, we have blood from the Stan country. So it's actually like Uzbekistan, Uzbekistan. We actually have blood from far western Asia.
Well, I have this like medical condition that's like familial Mediterranean fever that like they've like me and Chase went to, or like members of NIH being studied about that. Or like, what part of Mediterranean are we? But like, there's like a part of Mongolian.
Yes, that's the Mongolian that we found in our genetics.
Yeah, so we have this condition that like we get fevers that are like super high for no fucking reason at all. And we got studied by NIH for
That's
it.
why you're so tall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, it's like no hair, so tall, like man bun in the back.
Yeah.
It's awkward.
So I have a question for you, Tim. So Chef Tim, how would you define Asian fusion then, today?
So there's,
Your cuisine.
my cuisine is. I don't think any cuisine is fusion anymore. Like all of American cuisine is fusion, right? So it's like even what I do here, it's like me as a Chinese executive chef with like influence, right? Owned by a Hong Kong company, run by like a Nordic chef with tattoos on his face that looks like Post Malone. You know, in a hotel, like not defined by anything, right? So it's like I don't think that exists. And like in all of my other restaurants were always fusion of something else. So like I just think that's what it is. Like you can't go to a restaurant where I guarantee you cannot go to any new American restaurant that's defined and not find Asian influence on it, or Mediterranean influence on it, or Middle Eastern influence on it. Like that's just the standard right now, because that's what it is. So that's why I say fusion's not a bad word anymore, because that's just American cuisine.
But people are still favor of your dumpling you made and the baozi you made, right?
Yeah.
Those are your favorites. Yeah.
Well, that's the only situation in the United States, because if you go to China, it will be different.
It's all American.
People still value the tradition very much over there. So we have to think about how to keep, because we're Chinese, there's part of the Chinese culture is very valuable in us. That's why we are different from the rest of the people in the United States. So I think we should value the good tradition, and you can forget about the bad ones. And so we can become better American Chinese. So we'll be, yes, we are still Chinese, but we're different from the Chinese living in China, right? So we have to make ourselves special, but not so special that we forget why we are different. We're different because we still have the Chinese in us. That's what I think. Apparently we are different on this thing.
All right, we're gonna close out here because we have 4 minutes left.
I'd like to say one thing.
Yeah.
I noticed Tom Sisma. He keep on liking your food. I was wondering why, and then I realized he's looking for traditional Chinese food that coming from you. So he keep on following you. I think that's the reason he keep on following.
Well, I think he followed me because I was a chef of note, like of just in general, right? Like, and then the Asian French thing was super interesting in what I did. And then what's next? So
That's what we're looking forward to.
yeah. Everybody's
What's
looking forward
next?
to it.
Yeah.
All right. I don't even need to close out. We're all done. It's like I don't need to close out.
Okay,
it's like
so
Eaton Radio. It's like
it's a 100-foot journey, and let's carry on the tradition.
Yeah.
So anytime you're ready to accept Chris to come work for you for a summer.
the most important thing is actually like the generation name. Like aside from like the podcast and stuff like that, generation name. Like,
Podcast is fantastic.
because like I don't know how we name the
You
next
know,
generation.
Bing Li will be here
Yeah.
for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And his father is actually the oldest.
Yeah, the
Last
eldest
generation.
The eldest Ma generation.
And
We
he
always
still
forget
lives
that.
in
Yeah.
China. So let's talk to her dad.
I'll give you the answer.
Okay.
Well,
Later.
after we talk to
All right.
her dad.
Let me stop it. Thank you, Eaton Radio. I don't know what else to say. All right.
We love you, Tim.